Now it's time for Culture Talk. This is the segment where we talk about the intersection of science, faith, and pop culture and how culturally relevant topics can be used to start conversations about your faith. I'm joined with biochemist Fazale Rana. Thank you
Sandra.
for joining me. We're going to be talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
You excited about that one?
Yeah. It's coming out soon, December 14th.
I know, I'm excited. We're going to see an Afro-Latino Spider-Man in Miles Morales, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, Marvel's doing a great job of introducing diversity into their superhero universe.
Yeah, so I'm definitely excited to see that's going to be an animated feature. And I know for me, because of my love of comics and all of that, and I think you're the same, that when we see movies like this, we connect it to our faith. Yeah. And so I think, oddly enough, of biomimetics.
Yeah.
So let's dive into some of the things that you connect with when you watch films like this.
Well, it's interesting because Spider-Man is one of my favorite superhero characters for a number of reasons. But it's interesting because Stan Lee and Steve Ditko were inspired by spiders to create a superhero that had the qualities or the features of a spider. And spiders are remarkable creatures that have incredible capabilities. So it makes sense to inspire a superhero from them. But it's interesting because it's not just comic book writers and artists that draw inspiration from insects and from spiders and other creatures, but engineers are doing the same thing as well. And as you mentioned, this is called biomimetics.
Yep. And it's really cool because I think of the names that Spider-Man has, like wall crawler and web slinger. Like those are exactly the things that I think of when I'm looking at these films and then connecting it to the stuff I hear from Reasons to Believe of how engineers are trying to create webs and trying to be able to climb buildings but not get stuck. So let's dive into some of those fun things.
Yeah, well, it's not actually spiders that are inspiring the capacity to crawl along walls, or geckos. And of course, everybody's familiar with these lizards that can climb on ceilings and climb up walls. Well, in the last several years, researchers have characterized the microanatomy of the gecko's feet, and from that have developed a new category of adhesives that operate off of the same principles. And it could very well be that in the near future there will be gloves and boots that we can wear that allow us to climb walls just like Spider-Man.
Like Spider-Man,
So that's one fun example. And of course, Peter Parker and Spider-Man, the web slinger, and Peter Parker's a genius, of course, and kind of invented a synthetic spider web that he uses for his superhero persona. But there are a lot of engineers that are very interested in spider silk. And one of the reasons is because spider silk on a per weight basis is 4 times stronger than steel.
Wow.
And so you can imagine that people are trying to understand what is the structure, how do spiders actually manufacture the spider silk, because there's something in that manufacturing process that creates these incredible properties that the spider silk has. So, biology is inspiring a lot of interesting new technology.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. You're saying it's not just what the web is made of, but how it's made, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And that's still very much a mystery. But the hope is that by discovering how it's made, that's going to translate into new technologies that are just going to create a new class of materials that are going to be incredibly powerful and incredibly useful for engineers.
And what would this even be used for? Like, what would be an example of using something like the web and having that strength, something strong as a web?
Well, I mean, to have something that would be low weight but have incredible strength would be useful for countless numbers of applications, from industrial applications to manufacturing different types of clothing or other kinds of materials like that. So all kinds of applications, really the sky's the limit.
Yeah. It's really fascinating because I know in some of the other Spider-Man films, we did see Peter Parker trying to figure out how to make these webs. And so it's neat. It's almost like a reflection of what's happening in the labs where they're trying to figure out how can I make the perfect web where it can shoot out and be strong and capture villains and all of that.
Well, the thing that's neat is that not only do you see inspiration coming from the biological realm with biomimetics, but it also is inspiring really a new type of argument for God's existence. I call it the converse watchmaker argument. And it goes something like this, that if God created the designs that we see in biology, they should be so elegant and sophisticated that they can actually inspire human technology. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we see that very thing happening. So therefore, it's reasonable to think that God is responsible for creating the designs that we see in biology. But it also represents, I think, a challenge to an evolutionary view of life, because evolution's mechanism is cobbling things together. Mm-hmm. The designs that evolution produces are supposed to be fundamentally flawed, imperfect designs. Well, if that's the case, then those designs really are not worthy of inspiring engineering. And so biomimetics and bioinspiration, which is one of the most exciting areas in engineering today, mm-hmm. is actually an endeavor that makes sense in a creation model framework and doesn't fit very comfortably in an evolutionary system.
So how would you even start the conversation of, hey, like, I'm watching Spider-Man and these are some of the things that come up for me? How would you start that conversation?
Well, I think
to share your faith?
I think you could just simply start with how cool it would be if you mm-hmm. could crawl along walls, or if you could shoot out webs, mm-hmm. That had those kind of properties that Spider-Man takes advantage of. And that's an easy segue into saying, hey, this isn't just simply science fiction, but this is actually reality. Yeah. And then you introduce people to the whole area of biomimetics, and what does that mean then in terms of how do we explain biology?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I love how we see the comics and stories that are in front of us and we connect them to our faith. So thank you so much for joining us. If you want to hear more from Dr. Fazale Rana, check out his blog, The Cell's Design. Visit reasons.org.